What up? What up? It is Alex, the Fantasy Football Hustler, back at you. Waiver Wire Tuesday. We're talking some running backs that you need to pick up, some wide receivers. We might sprinkle in a quarterback or a tight end. We're going to be mentioning those streaming defenses. I know it's going to be big for you guys right now and through the playoffs. I'm going to be mentioning teams to pick up for this week, but also for your championship runs. We're going to be going through some of those players that you can drop as well. Sit back, relax, hit subscribe, hit the like button. Let's get down to biz. The hottest pickup of the week, Isaac Guerendo. CMC and Jordan Mason both on IR. It's funny how Jordan Mason's still like number 3 in the most picked up. Now, the thing about Guerendo, been the third string for the longest time. We saw him come in a couple little spurts like here and there. This is all about volume. The reason why he's the number 1 pickup is because this third stringer just turned into a starter. And we got to understand, he was third string for a reason. It's not because he's amazing. The schedule is nice over the next 3 weeks, but he does go up against the Lions in week 17. That's probably the worst matchup that you can have in your championship week. We got to do our due diligence. If you got Fab, just go look at what everybody else has. Just drop everything, because I'd rather have him on my team than have one of my opponents using him against me, especially in the playoffs. The one thing that everybody has to remember, the 49ers are a shit show right now. If he was actually playing on a team that had playoff hopes, that was doing amazing, that's one thing. But he's playing on a team that is underperformed. The whole team is in shambles, offense and defense. Players are going to start making business decisions very, very soon. So those are all things to take into account, just if you should actually play him moving forward. He's the number 1 pickup for a reason. Put it in your waiver claims, dump all your Fab. But if you're doing this out of luxury, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm throwing him into the lineup. Week 14, you probably are with 6 teams on bye, because it is ugly this week. Just because he's on the Niners, I'll mix him in. Patrick Taylor, you see he's one of the top added guys this week. It's really just adding depth. Like, he's really not going to be anything unless Guerendo ends up getting hurt. And San Francisco, just in general, I just talked about how everything is a crapshoot with them, because they're not going to be making the playoffs, and it's just going to be ugly all around. I know they have a couple decent matchups here, but unless you're super desperate, you're not playing him anyways. So probably just avoiding Taylor in general. Just a quick touch on Chris Rodriguez, because he's the number 2 added guy. I really don't want any pieces of him. Look at how much they were just smacking Tennessee last week. I doubt this is a normal thing. It's going to be all B-Rob the Mob. So yeah, we're not messing with Chris Rodriguez at all. If you need depth, go ahead and pick him up. But outside of being desperate for depth, you really don't have a reason to pick him up unless you are blocking a league mate. Jaleel McLaughlin's going to be a super hot name amongst the waiver wire pickups. And it's really because there's nobody else out there, and we saw signs of life from him. Let's not fall for it. It's been ugly more often than not. I know he got like 80 yards or something, but that's really not going to be a normal thing. And then the last guy I'm going to talk about here is all the way on the bottom of the list, Blake Corum. That's a depth piece that I wouldn't mind going and grabbing, only rostered in 21% of sleeper leagues. The thing that sucked about him is his snap count. Now, he got 32% of the snaps this past week. If it keeps going up and up because they're trying to limit Kyren at all, then he's someone that we might want to use in a random flex role. All these guys are really about adding depth, even Guerendo. Unless you are really hurting, I mean, he's more of a depth piece than he's going to be a league winning piece. The running backs, very, very ugly this week. Now for the wide receivers, of course, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is the number 1 trending wide receiver. Obviously. I've only been telling you to pick him up for the last, I don't know, 5 weeks. Look at this. Look at what he's been doing. He's got 8 touchdowns now in the last 8 games. Come on. Ever since their bye, he has been on fire. There's only 2 games since their bye where he got single-digit numbers. This is what we want out of a flex. Someone who gives us this constant upside. And he plays the Jags, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Jags one more time. No matter what, Ridley is going to be the guy that defenses are focusing on. That is never going to change because he is way more talented than Westbrook-Ikhine. So what happens? Westbrook-Ikhine gets a lot of one-on-one matchups, and he has been exploiting those one-on-one matchups. So if he is available, I'm going to tell you again for like the 5th week in a row to pick him up.
Pick him up!
Do it. Adam Thielen, someone that I told you to pick up recently as well. And what does he do? He gets 10 targets, 8 of them receptions, 99 yards, and a touchdown. They got the Eagles coming up this week, so it's really going to be a horrible matchup. But then you got the Cowboys, Arizona, and Tampa Bay in the playoffs. That's going to be money, so I'd pick him up.
Pick him up!
51% rostered. If you listened, you already have him. If you didn't, hopefully he's available in your league. Last wide receiver to talk about, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Another guy who I've just been saying pick up because Derek Carr has been doing this all year where he's hitting guys on these random deep balls. And because the wide receivers on paper are garbage for the Saints right now with Noah Olave and anybody else who was there to start the year, the teams just load up on Kamara. So what happens? Guy like MVS, who's one of the fastest guys in the NFL, breaks loose, gets those touchdowns. Pick him up.
Pick him up!
Super ugly for quarterbacks when we get this deep in the season. There's only one guy. There's 2 guys that I'm going to mention who are probably available in all of your leagues out there. One of them, Mr. Will Levis, who I am really not a fan of playing, but he's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got Westbrook-Ikhine. He's got Ridley. They got Pollard. You could do a lot worse than Will Levis. This is just if you are super desperate and you got one of the 6 teams on bye, you got to make a move. Will Levis is going to be one of those moves. And it's only going to get uglier and uglier because Aiden O'Connel is available in your league. He's only rostered in 7% of sleeper leagues. Going up against Tampa Bay. That is why the weak secondary, they're probably not going to be able to run too much. Bucs secondary kind of in shambles, and Aiden O'Connell is just going to keep throwing it. So is it ugly? Hell yeah. But should you pick him up if you got nobody else? Hell yeah, do it. Pick him up.
Pick him up!
Now we have made it to everybody's favorite section, the defenses that you must stream in week 14. I got 5 of them for you right here. I'm going to start off with 2 in the same game, and I'm going to start with the one team that is the least available. Remember, the team that I like the most will be at the end. Now, I am starting off with the Atlanta Falcons. Yes, 46% rostered right now, so just right on the cusp of that 50%. A lot of this has to do with the matchup. Minnesota over the last 5 weeks giving up around the 5th most points to team defense, so you gotta love the matchup. And then if that's not enough reason to pick them up, week 15, they got the Raiders, money in the bank. Week 16, they got the Giants, another team that is giving up extreme booty to the team defense. They play Washington in week 17. So this is someone, if you're picking them up, we're not using them for the entire stretch run. I would try to roster one more team if I could that has a really decent or really good week 17 matchup. But the Falcons is someone you can literally pick up and ride for the next 3 weeks. All right, I told you I had 2 from the same game. The Minnesota Vikings going up against the Falcons. And I flip-flopped how much Minnesota is giving up to team defense. They're actually 7th against the team D, and the Falcons are the ones who are giving up the 5th most points to team D over the last 5 weeks. So Minnesota actually a little bit of a better matchup. They were dropped like crazy because of some of the matchups that they had over the last few weeks and how they hadn't been killing it as much as they were earlier in the year. Great matchup this week versus the Falcons. And then at this point of the season, I'm trying to look for those good playoff matchups. So not only do the Vikings have a good matchup this week, they have a pretty solid matchup next week versus the Bears. And then you got Seattle in week 16. They've been giving up some of the most points out of any teams to team defense. The one thing that sucks with the Vikings, just like with the Falcons, really bad week 17 matchup. They play Green Bay in week 17. Either one of these first 2 teams, though, that I mentioned, the Falcons and the Vikings, worth picking up right now and riding for 3 weeks straight. You will notice a trend this week with the team defenses. And hell, if you've been following me forever, you'll notice it is always about picking up people based on the matchups. So we got the Bengals now, who only rostered in 16% of sleeper leagues. They got the Cowboys this week. Cowboys giving up the 4th most points to team defense over the last 5 weeks. And one thing that's been a trend, I'm not doing it on purpose, the Bengals, their next 3 games, money in the bank as far as team defense go. They got Dallas this week. They got Tennessee in week 15. And then you got the Browns in week 16. We just saw what the Browns gave up on Monday Night Football to the Broncos. Week 17, though, they play the Broncos. So not a good matchup at all. Just like the other teams, the Bengals, you can pick up and ride for 3 weeks, but you must be looking for a team for week 17. It does not matter how good the defense has been doing that you have been riding with. Do not play a defense in week 17 that has a bad matchup. Don't do it to yourself. I got 2 more team defenses left, and don't forget, I always save the best for last. The Saints are the hottest waiver wire defense pickup right now, trending as the number 3 overall added player on Sleeper. Giants have been a great matchup for the team defense. Over the last 5 weeks, they've been giving up the 2nd most points to team defense. So you gotta love the matchup for this week. A little bit different with the scheduling now. So Saints, they have an amazing matchup this week, but they actually have bad matchups in week 15 and 16, but they play the Raiders in week 17. So the difference between all of these defenses that I mentioned so far is that they've all had bad matchups in week 17, except for the Saints. So if you were going to pick up 2 defenses this week, the Saints could be someone that you pick up to play this week because it's an amazing matchup, and you hold for week 17. You don't play them in week 15 or 16 because they have bad matchups, but you hold them just for week 17. And now on to the team that I think should be the number 1 pickup for your team defenses and the one that is most readily available out of all 5 teams that I just mentioned. The team that you should pick up this week is the Arizona Cardinals because they are going up against the Seattle Seahawks. They love giving up turnovers over there in Seattle. Best team defense matchup that you can have right now is going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Even though they've been doing good on paper, they score, but they also give it up at the same time. Cardinals only rostered in 2% of leagues. Great matchup this week. You got New England in week 15, and then you got Carolina in week 16. You got 3 weeks in a row of great games, but then you play the Rams in week 17. So the Cardinals, just like the Falcons, Vikings, and the Bengals, they all got great matchups over the next 3 weeks, but then a horrible matchup in week 17. Godspeed, all you team defense people. If you guys playing IDP, the video is going to be coming out soon. And now we are going to get on to the players. Should you keep them or should you get rid of these bums?
Forget this bum.
This is a section where we get rid of all these bums.
He's a bum. He was a bum then, and he's a bum now.
Taysom Hill, of course, you drop him. He's injured. Jordan Mason, same thing. CMC, same thing. But let's get to some of the players who weren't injured. I like Vele. He's massively dropped because of their bye week. Got the Colts, the Chargers, and the Bengals coming up after the bye. He's someone who I'd hold, but if you need a roster spot because of the bye, I'm okay getting rid of him. Gus Edwards, I told you that he is not really going to be that good. Did I say to pick him up because like it's what we do our due diligence? But then look at what he ended up getting. Very blah amount of touches. I told you with J.K. Dobbins gone, it's just going to be a clusterfuck in the backfield. And that's exactly what we saw on display. So feel free to get rid of him.
Forget this bum.
Now, Roschon Johnson. El Kincusto got a big 0 against the Lions. Horrible game, no matter what. Then you got San Fran coming up next week. That has been a good matchup, but he's probably not going to play because he's El Kincusto. Then you got Minnesota, horrible. Detroit, horrible. Seattle, they've been better, but not really that bad. If you're starting Roschon Johnson, I'm sorry to say, you're not making the championship anyways. So I feel like you can drop Roschon Johnson, and I wouldn't be too worried about it. Anybody else here? Quentin Johnston, of course you're dropping him. Get rid of him. Ricky Pearsall, probably going to do a lot of nothing. If we see more players making business decisions out there, maybe he ends up getting some work towards the end of the season. But yeah, drop him.
He's a bum. He was a bum then, and he's a bum now.
Then you got Vidal. over here tried to tell you guys it's going to be nothing but a clusterfuck, and he went out there and disappointed, and hope you guys didn't start him. Hope you guys listened. And dude, how long have I been telling you guys about Deontay Johnson? This drop was literally created for him.
He's a bum. He was a bum then, and he's a bum now.
If you still have him, can you please just drop him and look at all of his games recently since week 9? 0, 1.6, 0, 0, 0. Like, why are we still holding him? Everybody else on the list, I hope you weren't rostering some of these guys like Coleman, Cam Akers. How about Kyle Pitts? I already told you guys that it was going to be a really horrible matchup versus the Chargers. Chargers have been giving up like the least amount of points to tight end since their bye. The writing is on the wall. They got the Vikings this week, who've been a middle of the road matchup for tight ends, but look at week 15 versus the Raiders. Smash matchup. Got to play him in that game. If nothing else, you pick him up just to start him in that game and then drop him, because the Giants, horrible matchup for the tight ends, and Washington has not been a good matchup for the tight ends either. So yeah, I want him for week 15 if I can somehow roster him until then and then drop him. But outside of that, forget this bum.
Forget this bum.
And there you have it. There is the end of the week 14 waiver wire pickups and drops. Leave a comment so I know that you guys watched all the way to the end. Don't forget, we got my redemption fantasy playoff leagues, and this is for the NFL playoffs. They're going to start drafting in about 4 weeks. Go join the crew so you can stay in the loop. 420crew.com. Do not slack on it. Also, don't forget to go get some merch at 420 Crew merch. You can get t-shirts for $12.50. Go check them out. Do not miss the sale. Don't forget to go check out the IDP video that's coming up for your waiver wires. We're going to keep hitting everywhere so we can get these championships. Hit that subscribe button so you can come hang out on the live streams, and we'll see you for the next one.